I'm Natalia Bonner. Welcome back. Happy Monday. All right, today I have a fun little table topper that I recently machine quilted, and I get to share my full process of machine quilting that table topper with you here today. So in this video, I am going to go a little bit more in depth and show you a bit more of my process than I usually do here on YouTube. If you want to see more of my process like this, see more of my process of planning and quilting full quilts, make sure you do check out the Piece N Quilt Academy. Over in the Piece N Quilt Academy, we have a library of over 130 machine quilting videos. Like, these are detailed videos. They range from like 10 minutes to some of them are over an hour long. And in these videos, I share my full process of custom machine quilting quilts. There is definitely some inspiration over there for everybody. You can enroll at any time, and then once you enroll, you gain access to the full library. So definitely check out the Piece N Quilt Academy on our website, pieceandquilt.com. But today, this quilt that I am going to be quilting, or table topper, it's just a little cute little table topper. I am going to be using a bit of machine quilting, both hand-guided and ruler quilting. So I'll be doing all of my quilting here on my Gamble 22-inch machine. I do like to quilt in the stitch regulated mode, and I do have my stitch length set at 13 stitches per inch. That's just what I like. I play around with my settings and just find what works best for me. I recommend that you do the same. Play around with your settings. You know, if one mode works better for you, stick with that. There's no reason that you shouldn't be able to just play around and have fun with your machine. So a few of the products that I am going to be using here today. I'm going to be using So Fine Thread. You know I love So Fine Thread. Personally, I've had great experience with it. It runs really nice on my machine, so that's just what I'm sticking with. Throughout this whole entire quilt, I am going to be using So Fine color number 419. It's this nice yellow, and it blends really nicely even on the black fabric. It still looks pretty awesome. And then I've been loving the pre-wound Super Bobs by Superior Threads, so that's what I'm going to be using here on my bobbin. The color that I'm choosing, I use it most often, is color number 624. It blends so nicely. The backing on this little quilt was a yellow fabric, and this just kind of takes on that yellow color. Now, because the curves here on this quilt are a little bit different than the curves that I usually quilt, I've actually pulled out some of my favorite machine quilting rulers from the Quilted Pineapple, and I found that the number 15 ruler and also the number 20 ruler, the curves on those seem to work really nicely on this quilt. So that's what I'll be using here, in addition to my mini 4-in-1 machine quilting ruler with our Piece N Quilt Pop Socket ruler grip. Now, the batting that I've chosen to use here is one layer of the Quilter's Dream Poly Deluxe batting. I love the texture that this batting has. It just adds a little bit. It is a little bit more stiff than like a blend batting, but once it's washed up, it really creates a beautiful result. So friends, let's hop over to my machine and let's get stitching. Let's start out with this cute table topper before I begin any machine quilting. I always think it's fun to see what they look like before and then after. So here you can see the after all the machine quilting is complete. So how am I going to quilt this? I chose to use the Sway machine quilting ruler along with those Quilted Pineapple rulers to really kind of make that center circle pop, so that light circle. By using those curves on the ruler, you can see how it really draws the attention there. Then in all of that yellow, kind of the four sides background area, I'm going to machine quilt a heavy background filler. By doing that and adding an echo line around all of the other curves, that background is going to kind of lay down and become secondary, which I want it to become. Now, to kind of play on the cross hatching that's going on, or not cross hatching, on the actual fabric that's going on, I chose to do some curved cross hatching in those 4 corner blocks, and I'm also going to do some cross hatching in the side blocks, those black ones. Now, it's really hard to see here on camera because it really kind of melted into the fabric, but I'll show you a few close-up images, and as I quilt, you'll really see how I do that curved cross hatching. I had so much fun. Let's hop over to my machine and let's get quilting. I'm going to start here with the quilted pineapple number 15 curve. I felt like that was the perfect curve to fit along this portion of the quilt. Now here you can see I'm using the side of that ruler and I'm lining that up so that I can stitch in the ditch between the black fabric and the yellow checkerboard fabric. I'll stitch my first line. Once I've stitched that first curved line along my ditch, then I'm going to travel up the ditch along the side of the next stitch. I'm going to move up a 1/2 inch. So stitch up that ditch a 1/2 inch. At that point, then I'm going to adjust my machine quilting ruler and I'm going to adjust it to the point where that first marked line on this ruler lays right on top of my previous stitch line. And I'm going to repeat that process. So I'm stitching out like an echo line here, but using the markings on the quilted pineapple number 15 ruler and a ruler foot on my Gamble machine help me guide and work my way through this section to quilt those curves evenly spaced and as close to perfect as I can. I'm definitely not perfect. Now, whenever you're doing machine quilting with rulers, make sure that you remember gentle pressure. You want to have gentle pressure on your hand that's guiding your machine, as well as on your ruler as you're guiding your machine along the side of the ruler. You can see here that I do have the Gamble ruler foot on my machine, which is an essential tool whenever you're machine quilting with machine quilting rulers. I do also have, you can't see it here because it's underneath the quilt, but I do have the Gamble extended base plate on my ruler, and that creates a nice flat working surface so that I can hold my rulers nice and flat as I'm working here. It also makes it look like the quilt is really tight on my machine when in reality it's not as tight, just that nice flat working surface makes it appear to be that way. So once I've stitched out that first set of curved lines, now you can see I'm going to work my way back across the block, coming now in the opposite direction. And again, I'm stitching those curved lines using that side of the quilted pineapple ruler. Now I will repeat that same design in each of the 4 corners on this quilt, but I work on, like I've mentioned, the Gamble 22-inch machine. Because of that, I like to do all of my quilting across my quilts from top to bottom, left to right. So I've quilted that first left corner. I'm actually going to skip the black section. I'm still at this point actually kind of thinking about what I'm going to quilt there. So I'm going to move on and I'm going to quilt around in the ditch around the next yellow section. So often when I'm going to quilt a heavy background filler, I like to add this small echo line. It gives my eye a nice place to rest and kind of breaks up the heavy background filler from the actual next design. So like you can see here, I'm using, again, that quilted pineapple ruler, and now I'm lining the edge of the ruler up with my ditch. By doing that, I am stitching a line that is evenly spaced 1/4 inch away from my ditch. Now, how do I know it's 1/4 inch? Well, a ruler foot, pretty much every ruler foot I've seen, is designed so that from your needle position to the outside of the foot, it measures 1/4 inch. So it's a way of doing a little bit of measuring without actually measuring, just using the side of my foot. Once I've added that echo stitch all the way around, now I'm going to start filling in with that clam background filler. To quilt that design, I start out by stitching 1 teardrop shape. From there, then I'm going to simply work back and forth, adding some echoes around the outside of that shape. Working back and forth, trying to alternate directions and fill in the space completely. When I do stitch out this design, I definitely, first of all, try to alternate directions, but also try to give my clams random numbers of echoes around them. So sometimes they might only have 1 or 2, sometimes they might have 3 or 4. The biggest thing that I'm trying to remember here is to keep my quilting density the same. I don't want to have one area where the clams are really tight and really small, and then the rest of them, they're large. I just want to be consistent so that when you look at this overall, you see the design as a whole and not just focus on one area. I'll repeat that process until I've filled in this space completely. And then, like the first design, as I advance my way through the block or even the quilt, I'll machine quilt the same design in each of the same shape throughout the quilt. So at this point, I did finally decide what I want to quilt in those black sections. Again, I'm going to keep that same yellow thread on my machine, and you can see how it really blends nicely here on the black fabric. Another reason why I love the So Fine thread. So I'm going to do a play on the cross hatching that I did in the corners. You can see here that I'm going to start out by adding an echo stitch all the way around the inside of that black shape. Once I've added that echo stitch, then I'm going to start and add curved lines using the side of that ruler, just like I did on the cross hatching. Only difference here, I'll be using the concave side of that ruler to stitch these out. And instead of stitching all the way across the shape, I'm going to stitch to that first echo line that I added. So it, again, just gives my eye a nice little place to rest. I'll repeat the process, first going from one side and then going from the second side. So here you can just see another angle where I'm quilting out the same design. So starting out with that echo, you can see if you look closely that I'm lining up that first marked line on the machine quilting ruler right on top of the ditch, and then filling in the rest of the space with those curved lines. As I continue to work my way through this block, now I'm going to work on those gray sections. So again, I'm going to start out by stitching in the ditch. I love the look of stitch in the ditch. Once I've completed my stitch in the ditch work, now I'm going to add those echo lines, those curved lines. And I want them to look like they're radiating out, like they're going in a circle. So I am going to be using the spine on the outside, or the ditch on the outside of the block, as my reference. You'll see how I'll stitch my first echo line that's evenly spaced a 1/2 inch in from that top side of the block. I'll stitch that first line and then travel down my ditch when I get to the opposite side of the block, moving a 1/2 inch, and then from there I'll stitch my second line. Now I'll work my way back and forth until I filled in that top side of the block completely. And I'll repeat the same process on the left side and then again on the right side. Now, one thing I definitely will tell you is that when you are holding your ruler on the back side of your machine, it can be a little bit more difficult than when you're able to hold your machine towards your body. Most often when I am machine quilting, I am trying to figure out ways where I can hold my machine quilting ruler on the side to my body, closer to my body, or on the left side, just because it's easier. So I definitely did not quilt perfect lines here, but that's okay. Once I take this off of the machine, you can see it really ends up looking quite beautiful. So as I advance my quilt, I based as I'm going. So you can see here that I've advanced my quilt. So my next sections are in my throat space. And now I'm just running a simple straight stitch down the sides as far as my throat space will allow. I'll baste down each side, add my clamps, and then I'm ready to begin quilting. So we're definitely going to speed this up here, but I just wanted to give you a view from the side, and you can see how once I've advanced my quilt, I'll continue to work my way as much fits in my throat space from left to right across the quilt. So starting with that left side, and then I'll continue to work my way across. Moving on to that center portion of this block, I am going to create a fun point-to-point design. And this is something that's fun to do when you have a lot of machine quilting rulers. Just start finding points and quilting point to point. So I'll start out here quilting through the center using the number 15 curve on the quilted pineapple ruler. So I'll work my way around the outside, then I'll switch and use that convex curve on the ruler, and I'm going to quilt point-to-point curves again through the center. Next, I'm going to switch to the mini 4-in-1 machine quilting ruler. I'll stitch using the straight side of that ruler right into the center point on that block. Next, I'm going to switch to the quilted pineapple number 20 curved ruler, and I'm going to stitch a long curve from that center point all the way to that outside point on that center block. Now I'm stitching to the center of that outside point, so it's like a square out there at the end. I'm stitching right to that center point. And I'm using first the convex side of the ruler, and then I'll flip it and use that concave side of the ruler to stitch right back to the center. I'll repeat that process on all 4 corners of the block. I love how that center block turned out. I did complete it by stitching in the ditch through the 4 center seams just to add a little bit more detail. But overall, I love it. I love how this full quilt turned out. Now, if you want to see more in-depth videos where I go more into my process, make sure you do check out the Piece N Quilt Academy over on our website, pieceandquilt.com. Have a great day, everybody.
Can you hear it? Oops. Make it stand higher.
Just leave it at that height, because that's the height I like it at.
Hello, hello? Okay. Okay.
Joke number 1, Brayden.
Is my hair all good?
Hey everybody, I'm Natalia Bonner. Welcome back. Happy Monday. All right, today I have a fun little table topper that I recently made settings. You know, if one mode works better for you, stick with that. There's no reason that you shouldn't be able to just play around and have fun with your machine. So a few of the products that I am